they are trying to secure that number 1 overall pick, which tells me they're going to get 5th overall. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the draft. So let's go ahead and just, because we're at the point where there isn't anything else interesting to talk about, but I love this team and we're going to talk about it, let's have a little bit of fun. What happens if they get anything below the 3rd overall pick? Now, in my opinion, to make this historically bad season be worth it, you got to get top 2. I will settle for the 3rd overall pick. Mainly because at that point, it's like, okay, it's better than nothing. It really is better than nothing. It's like the bare minimum.
I completely disagree with you. I think if you don't hit 1 or 2, it's a failure. Because the reason I say this is this team has always desperately needed a franchise center. And 1 and 2 in this draft is going to be, I don't know if they'll be franchise, but they'll be very good centers. Logan Cooley is projected to go number 2, and Shane Wright is projected to go number 1. We're pretty sure that that's going to be the final draft order for 1 and 2. And I think number 3 is kind of could be a winger, could be a defenseman, and that is not what this team needs right now.
But think about it like this, because remember, to get optimistic for a minute, right? It's going to run out in a minute, but let's just get optimistic. Remember when I said they own this draft? They could be a playoff team, and they could still probably get the 1st overall pick because of the amount of assets. If they get number 3, they very realistically, depending on who gets number 1 and number 2, they could make a move and try to still get a top 2 pick, and it wouldn't cost them as much to move up as if they had like 5th or 7th or 10th or whatever. So as long as they, in my opinion, still get no less than number 3, I will accept it. But number 1 and number 2 is a successful season. But yeah, that's why I think number 3 is like the bare minimum. Let's go ahead and talk about. Just give me your reaction. I'm just gonna start throwing out numbers, and because you're the visual one here, I want to see you represent the Coyotes fans. What is your reaction? 4th overall.
I fight with myself because if we want to talk about 4th overalls, a perfect example of that would be the 2017 draft, where Colorado had historically one of the worst seasons in their franchise, which is similar to what the Coyotes are going through, and they dropped to 4th. Everybody went, wow, that's awful. This needs to be reworked. I believe that was the Nico Hischier and Nolan Patrick draft, and they ended up dropping to 4th and picking up a little guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is Cale Makar. So, I always think analytically in my head, I go 1 and 2, like those are the best, but it also matters on, seeing a guy that you like and hitting on that, because if you're going to make an argument, I would say in that draft, even though they picked 4th, Cale Makar is probably the best pick out of that draft so far. I think the guy in Dallas, the young kid, Robertson.
Nick Robertson? That kid?
Yeah, I think he was also in that draft, and I think he's making a strong fight for being the 2nd best asset in that draft. I think that was also the Elias Pettersson draft as well. So those 3 are like kind of the ones that I would say are the best so far. I don't think Hischier has played up to his potential. We knew Nolan Patrick was a injury liability, and he has continued to show that in the NHL. And then the Vegas Golden Laughs decided to pay an arm and a leg for that, which is hysterical, I guess.
They're not a real team. They are not the real desert hockey team. If they weren't so busy trying to play a 10-year-old AZ sports guy playing NHL 06, they would have one of the best young cores. Not just a very, very good but injury-prone core that's kicking them out of the playoffs. They'd have one of the best young cores. Yeah, I don't get the logic.
Just to throw some names out there for what Vegas has given up so far, they gave up Brandstrom, which has looked meh in Ottawa, but in the minor leagues he looked really good. So if he can figure that game out, remember, defensemen take longer than forwards. Let's not kid ourselves on that. That's a legitimate thing. They gave up Brandstrom. They gave up Peyton Krebs. They gave up Nick Suzuki. They gave up Cody Glass. Who else am I missing on that list?
Just pretty much, just think anyone they've ever gotten Kirby Doc, right? They had Kirby Doc, or am I thinking about the wrong team? I thought they had Kirby Doc. Let me go ahead and
No.
triple check this.
No. That was maybe. No, I don't think so. I think Doc was drafted to Chicago.
Chicago,
But
you're right. Damn it. I thought he was the guy I was looking at when I was watching that draft. Never mind. Forget me. Forget me. I just want to dunk more on Vegas. Let's go ahead and just subtract that for the record.
Yes. But if they make they miss the playoffs, that will be chef's kiss from the NHL. I think everybody's rooting for that right now. People do not like their fans. The arrogance, pompousness of their fans has been just absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand how when you're gifted a good team like that, you're going to be that arrogant about it. I sat next to some Seattle fans actually 3 months ago, maybe, when Seattle came in for the first time. And that was actually the game. I think we won our first game after like 9 straight losses or something like that. And I was talking to him about it. I was like, look, your team's going to suck for a couple of years. I'm not going to lie to you. I told him this. I was like, I'm not going to lie to you. But the thing is your team is setting itself up for a franchise future to be good for a long time. Whereas Vegas is going to be bad for a long time. If they do not win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 years, 3 years, they are going to end up being the San Jose Sharks of the desert. They will be. That is, I will put my stamp down on that one. They will be the San Jose Sharks of the desert if they fail to achieve their goal of winning the Stanley Cup. And I know why they did it. I think the owner I think what he termed was in the relentless pursuit of the Stanley Cup. I think he knows that in that market, he has to solidify himself as the best team in Vegas after the Raiders moved there, right? And I think that he is very nervous about the possibility of another team, maybe even in the NBA, moving there. So I think he is in desperate need for winning a Stanley Cup, because if he does not, he could see that hype peter out in Vegas. To get back real quick, wait, did you have anything else to say about Vegas, or can I get back to the draft real quick?
The one thing I was gonna say is, look, they would have had a cup if they would have just learned a little bit of patience, because they keep going after brand names and then ruining the locker room chemistry. Yep. Nate Schmidt should have been their first captain. I don't care. I got into an argument with some idiot on Twitter that shall remain nameless. It's like, oh, it's the best player on the team. No, it isn't. It's the best player with the best leadership ability, and that was Nate Schmidt. He was the heart and soul of that defense. It was the second year that they were in the league when he got suspended for PEDs. That defense, even though Shea Theodore is a phenomenal talent, looked terrible until he got back. It's like, but no, we need these shiny new toys. Like, no, if you would have just managed properly, still go after Stone, sure, still go after whatever, still go after some key free agents if you want to, but you do not need to be constantly giving up your future, because do you want to know why great teams stay great? They build a winning culture. They acquire some key veterans while also trying to maintain some good young talent in the wings, so you can slot them in when you need them and sustain it for as long as possible. Because even after a great run is over, you got some good young kids that are going to keep you relevant. So you try to figure out what your next phase is. And Vegas didn't do that. And as someone who I stood up for that team, right? When people were saying, oh, hockey doesn't belong in the desert, all that same crap they were saying about us, I was like, yeah, no. As soon as they were announced to go to Vegas and I saw that, I'm like, this is my new second team. And I grabbed this team, like, this team's going to be my new second team. If the Coyotes ever move, I at least have a team in the desert, one state away I can go watch that isn't California. And then just seeing how those fans, like, treat people, not all of them, but the fair weather ones, the ones that you can tell are just like bandwagoners, how it was their second or third year in the league, and my girlfriend at the time brought me to a Knights Coyotes games. I'm wearing a Coyotes jersey, a Knights hat to show support for both, but I would cheer for the Coyotes. When it got to overtime, I would cheer for whoever. This guy's like,
Yeah.
oh, I saw you cheering for the Coyotes. I'm like, I'm wearing a Coyotes jersey. We're in Arizona. What
Yeah.
team do you think I've been watching for the last 12, 13 years, whatever it was at that point? I'm like, dude, like that culture, the whole throwing away the locker room chemistry with reckless abandon, how they treated the face of their franchise, Marc-Andre Fleury. Look, if it wasn't for me being essentially held captive emotionally by the Arizona Coyotes after the Dome thing, I would have never ever came back. So like it's only because I love the team so much that I eventually got over it and got back into it, and it's just no, the
They
situation still
also
frustrates me. So it's like now I'm like Vegas is dead to me, and I want to see them fail because they had everything right there. They were likable. They had a great group of guys, great prospects. They fleeced so many teams in that expansion draft that thought they could like take advantage of the new guys to the point
Yep.
where nobody really wanted to deal with Seattle. Like Seattle got dealt a worse hand because of the Vegas draft. Like if anything, Seattle
Yep.
fans should probably hate Vegas for that. And it's like I have so much pent up anger and frustration because being in Vegas with my dad for that cup run is what got me back into hockey. I wouldn't be talking about Arizona sports if it wasn't for that. Like I'm so like conflicted when I think about it, but I'm so angry and disgusted at that organization for how they treat the people that helped make them, and then just the arrogance surrounding it. Like, yeah, no, I want to see them suck, and I want to see them suck for a while. Trademark Stone to a real team so we can actually win a cup. That man deserves so much better. That's my piece. I needed to get at least one rant in an episode.
There you go. We're gonna hop back over to draft talk real quick here. I keep saying real quick. I need to cut that out of my vocabulary. We're gonna hop back over to draft talk, but ugh, speaking too fast. But first, I want to ask everybody who is listening still to this point, if you could give us a like or a follow or a subscription on whatever platform that you're listening to or watching from. It would really appreciate it because we're a small group here. You know, Matt and I are just two dorky sports nerds talking about unsuccessful sports, except for one mainstream team and one smaller team who are actually good here in Arizona. And you know, we're gonna keep it going, no matter if all the teams suck or if all the teams are good. So, you know, if you could give us a listen to, you know, watch, like, follow everything, we'd really appreciate it. As for that, I will stop with the begging for attention, and we'll hop back over to the draft part of the Coyotes. And I was going to finish up with what I was talking about. You coined the question to me if the Coyotes draft at the 4th position, if it was a successful year or not. I'm going to say no. Because the reason I say this is that in 2017, to get back to the point I was talking about with Colorado, that draft kind of looked like crap from the top. A lot of people were saying that it was a weak draft. It wasn't a very good draft. And when you talk about the 1-2 punch of Hischier, Nolan Patrick, I would say they're kind of right. It wasn't a very good 1-2 at the top of that draft. Now, the later rounds, or the later picks, definitely performed better than that 1-2. But I don't think that this 2022 draft is going to be like that. I think that 1 and 2 are going to be very good. If you're talking about centermen that we desperately need at number 4, Matthew Sayovi, I think that's how you say it, is looking really good in his Canadian team. That could be a centerman that you could take it for. I've seen people toss around the name Geeky. I think it's Connor Geeky. I think his brother's already drafted to one of the NHL teams, so I never remember the first name, but last name is Geeky. He is a big boy. He is very much what Bill Armstrong is looking to add to this team. Big body with some skill. I think he's like 6'6" at 18, which is crazy how big he is. I could be exaggerating. Maybe he's like 6'4", but I'm pretty sure I read a stat that says 6'6". That could be a guy that you're looking at. If you're drafting at 4, my guess is it'll be either Joaquin Kemmel, or Yuri Slavkovsky. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. That would be my assumption at number 4, and those two are wingers. So another option that I could see being successful is if Bill Armstrong is like, hey, we don't need wingers, we don't need Slavkovsky or Kemmel. Maybe they trade back as well, right? If you can trade back with somebody, let's say you drop from 4 to 7, right? And you pick up Geeky, and you get maybe another second or a late first out of it. I would assume probably a second. That could be worth it too. Having a Geeky and then like putting him in a couple years' time with Gunther, you'll have a bunch of players that are coming up. Could make sense. It could make sense.
What about my personal little prediction of if they go 5 or lower with their pick?
Think you can, unless they end up finishing second last. Mm-hmm. I think the lowest you can draft is 4.
I thought it was lower than 4 or 5 slots. Like it was like you can go down 3 to 5. I could have read the rule wrong.
So I don't officially know. This was last year's draft. I think the lowest you could go if you were in last was to 4. We don't actually. I don't think we actually know because they haven't released how this year's draft is going to look. So they haven't actually even officially released what the percentiles will be for each position for the lottery. So I could be wrong. And let's say hypothetically they do finish 5th. Whether that's what you're talking about with dropping to 5th from 1st, I don't think you can. But if you drop from, let's say you finish 2nd and you drop to 5th, that would be really bad. That would be Mayday type scenario.
All right, quick. You're Bill Armstrong, all right? Because at least the way I remember the rules being is like you can't jump up or jump down X amount of spots from where you were the previous year because they were trying to stop tanking. So I saw that when I was watching the draft last year, so that's why I mentioned 5. So let's say whatever it is, you get 5th overall, right? You are your GMBA. You have you are taken aback. What is your course of action? You have 30 seconds. What is your course of action?
Oh God. Okay, so if you're drafting at 5, I am panic buying up to at least 2 if I can. If nobody's locking in if they're locking in and saying nobody's trading away, I would be in utter dismay and probably be selling my 5 to go back to maybe 6, 7, 8 area. That's what I'd be doing, because at that point, all the assets that you're looking at from 5 backwards are kind of a shuffle on the board. There's a lot of really good assets. Nothing is elite. So I'd be falling back a little bit, picking on a second, and then praying, crossing your fingers that one of those. We currently have 4 seconds, but if you add a second, we would be back to 5. I'd be praying that one of those 5 seconds would hit. A good example of a player that is a big hit on a second round would be Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes. He was a second-round pick in the 2015 draft. That would be a guy that you'd be crossing your fingers praying that you'd hit on. Another one would be, I think Braden Point was a third-rounder, just to give some examples of assets that you can find in the late rounds. And remember, it's not as far-fetched as people think. Once again, Arizona has invested a ton of money into their scouting staff. They went from one of the worst scouting staffs to one of the best. Now, the only thing I will say is I'm still questioning their development. The people that they put in charge of development, you're going to need to develop these players, not only just scout good players. developing is the other half of that battle. So I haven't seen it yet, but if you see some pieces come in and develop really well, then I will lift that tag off. But yeah, my biggest thing would be you would want to walk back a little bit, go from 5 to maybe like 8-ish, and see if you can pick up a second.
Right, so now that we got the panic out there, I liked your strategy. If I had the same exact thing, we're at number 5. What I'm actually doing is a little more drastic. I'm going back to like 15 because I think I can get extra assets, like
Yep.
even more. Because you might
Yep.
also be able to get, depending on who you're trading with, another late first, so you can technically get like 2 firsts and like a second or something, depending on it depends on who you're trading with, supply and demand and all that. That'd probably be my strategy. But one thing I do want to disagree with you now that we got, I think your more complete argument out is how often do we see this? And it's every year because no matter how many times we all think it's going to be different, it almost never is. Oh yeah, this winger is a better asset, so they're going to get picked here. They're going to get picked here. Centers will always go above wingers, even if the wingers are
Yeah.
clearly better talents. Look at
Yep.
sorry, look at Dylan Gunther. We got the 9th overall pick, or was it 11th? I forget which in the
Ninth.
last draft. So
So
9th.
we had 11, but it was taken from us because of the testing players.
Right.
Just
So
to quickly throw out there, the 11th would have been Cole Sillinger, who has looked really good, by the way, in Columbus. Yikes!
weren't we looking to get Cole Sillinger? I thought he jumped up because didn't he
No,
get taken just for us? Because
no, he was
wait,
taken
who's
after
the
that
guy
11.
that? No, Johnson. It was that kid
Johnson.
Johnson. Kent
Yes.
Johnson's the guy that we wanted, and he
Yep.
got taken above. And then another
Mhm.
guy I wanted in the second round. I wanted them to take Zach Dean and then take Josh Dunn with their second round pick. But
Mhm.
Vegas took him at the very end of the first round because centers, no matter how great a defensive prospect, a winger prospect, unless they're like a borderline generational looking talent, they will always a center because big frame, big guy, you can do more with centers. Like you see it all the time, and it leads to teams reaching on picks. I mean, look, I will always defend Dylan Strome as being a good hockey player. I think Dylan Strome, when he was here before he got traded, he was running a more efficient power play than Clayton Keller was on the second unit. He had more power play points. I think he was top 5 in power or face-off percentage. He
Yep.
was playing very well in uber limited minutes on the fourth line.
Yep.
Should we have? Was it 4th overall they got him, or was it a little bit lower?
Third.
Third.
They got.
So
Yep.
should they have taken him 3rd overall? No. Does he look terrible in comparison to guys that went? I think it was like 4th or 5th or 7th or whatever. Sure, I'll give you that argument. I'm not going to sit here and be intellectually dishonest. But when you look at the product itself, Dylan Strome was and still is a good player. But when you're a franchise that needs a great player, when you're a franchise that you're looking at it like, oh, this better talent was available, I completely understand why fans look at it that way. But centers will always go first because teams think centers are safe picks.